It would cut in a little bit deeper and eventually went almost the entirety, from side to side of my neck at the time.
The wound went deep, cutting almost all the way across her neck. She began screaming at once, thinking she was about to die. Soon she couldn't make a sound and could barely breathe through her mouth or nose. Though she was in a cold cooler, she felt strangely warm, only to realize she was covered in blood. She stayed calm and logical, looking for a way to survive. When she saw the cooler door was slightly open, she tried to escape, but her attacker returned. He grabbed her hair and attacked her throat a second time. She quickly pretended to be dead until he left. With one hand holding her neck to breathe and slow the bleeding, she crawled roughly 12 feet to safety. She told herself she was strong, too young, and had too much to live for to give up. Just when she thought all hope was lost, a shadow appeared in the doorway. It was a customer who found her, asked if she was okay, and immediately called for help. Against all terrible odds, this 18-year-old girl fought and survived.
He then asked me if he needed to call 911. All I could do was move my hand away from my neck and let him see what had happened.
When the man walked in and asked if she needed him to call 911, she could only move her hand away from her neck to show him her life-threatening injuries. Shocked and scared, he backed out of the store right away and dialed 911 immediately. The average person has about 10 to 12 pints of blood, and losing half is usually fatal. But she still had only 3.5 pints left, yet remained conscious and able to communicate. Doctors couldn't believe she was even alive, let alone awake. Her attacker had slashed her trachea in 2 places. One cut went 3/4 of the way through, and the other completely through. He severed her left vocal cord, damaged her right one, and sliced her left jugular vein entirely in half. Doctors told her she'd probably never live on her own, stay in the hospital for at least 3 months, never speak again, and suffer severe brain damage from blood loss and lack of oxygen. They said she'd be an invalid for the rest of her life. The attacker was a long-term crack addict with an extensive criminal record dating back to the year she was born. After the attack, a doctor offered free plastic surgery to cover her scars, but she turned it down. To her, the scars are proof of what she survived, a mark of her strength, and something to inspire others going through hard times. She survived because of her instincts, her strong will to live, and that customer who found her in time. She was only 18, and she had so much more to live for.
Oh, wait, hold on. You guys want to? Yeah, she's going to jail for battery on LAR now, so.
Hey, open the door, man. Go ahead, man. Open the door. I don't want you to tear the door up.
Just be careful. In case you got a knife or something, so.
Everybody be smart. Open the door, man.
Hey, give us traffic. Give us traffic as well.
15, give us traffic. I'm having my taser out.
For more than 24 hours, no one inside the hotel room had answered the door. Calls from the front desk went unanswered, and repeated knocks from staff were met with silence. Growing concerned, hotel management finally made the decision to call the police. Within minutes, officers arrived and quickly sealed off the hallway. Standing outside the closed door, they shouted several times, hoping someone inside would respond. But the room remained completely quiet. The tension in the corridor began to build. Guests watched nervously from a distance, whispering among themselves, all wondering the same thing. What was happening behind that door? After several attempts to make contact failed, one officer made the call. If someone inside was in danger, they couldn't wait any longer. Soon after, firefighters stepped forward with their tools, preparing to force the door open. One firefighter held up a screwdriver and nodded to the team. Everyone held their breath. Hands clear, ready? In a matter of seconds, the mysterious door that had stayed closed for over a day was about to be opened. Fear, suspense, and anticipation filled the hallway as all eyes focused on that single moment when the door would finally reveal what had been hidden behind it.
To steal the vehicles that I'm sure they stole, to then go after an ATM just seems like a lot of work.
Parts and pieces of the ATM machine were left behind, the front, the top, but naturally the suspects took the heart of the machine, the part with all the money. The crime scene was a curiosity to folks in the neighborhood. Theories are percolating.
I don't think these are amateurs that did this. This is somebody I think that knows how to do this kind of stuff.
La víctima presentó una demanda por 3 millones cuando un cliente hirió gravemente a un cajero al verter una sopa caliente insatisfecha con su temperatura. Amanda Nicole Martínez, de 31 años, pidió una sopa picante para empacar en casa. Luego regresó a la tienda furiosa, diciendo que la sopa estaba demasiado caliente como para que la tapa de la caja de comida para llevar se derretiera. Janelle Browland, una cajera de 24 años, le devuelve el dinero y le propone una solución para cambiar los platos, pero Martínez no quería escucharlo. Ella continuó insultando delante de los niños y otros clientes. Janelle mantuvo la calma y le pidió que dejara de insultar y se fuera, o llamara a la policía. De repente, el cliente arrojó sopa caliente casi hirviendo en la cara de Janelle. Cuando Janelle reaccionó, corrió rápidamente para enjuagar, pero la sopa caliente causó que Janelle sufriera graves quemaduras en la cara y sangrara en la nariz y los ojos. Posteriormente, la policía llegó a la residencia de Martínez y lo arrestó. Martínez se negó a declarar culpable en la audiencia, pagó una fianza de $5,000 y fue puesta en libertad más tarde ese día.
A woman shot and killed 3 masked teenagers who tried to break into her home early in the morning. She says it was self-defense, but the teens' families are now demanding that she face criminal charges. The 3 teenagers approached the home wearing masks, allegedly attempting an armed robbery. Moments later, gunshots rang out from inside the house, striking all 3 suspects. 1 teen died at the scene. The other 2 were rushed to the hospital, where they were later pronounced dead. Family members later confirmed the victims were only 15 and 16 years old. The female homeowner told authorities that at least one of the teens was armed and fired a shot at her first. Fearing for her life, she opened fire in response. Despite this, the families insist her actions were excessive, claiming she had no right to take their sons' lives and demanding she be held accountable. However, investigators later recovered 2 guns in the front yard and found ballistic evidence supporting the woman's statement. Authorities confirmed that at least one of the teens did fire a weapon. Based on the evidence, police concluded this was not a misunderstanding, but a planned attempted armed robbery. Officials also stated that the homeowner acted within the state's stand your ground and self-defense laws, meaning her actions were legally justified. What's your take on this?
The former football player was arrested on suspicion of child SA. Omar Bravo, 45 years old, was once a renowned football player. It is reported that Bravo repeatedly committed SA against an underage girl, and this behavior can be traced back to 2019, when the victim was only 11 years old. According to the police, Bravo had engaged in such acts multiple times, and the victims were far from being limited to just one. On September 30th, the victim formally filed a complaint detailing the SEX contact, inappropriate behavior. The prosecution has now collected 42 photos, 2 videos, statements from multiple witnesses. According to local media reports, the victim had been living with Bravo, and there might be audio evidence to support these accusations. On October 4th, Bravo was arrested by the police for severe child SA. The next day, Bravo attended the preliminary hearing where he was formally charged. The judge determined that there was sufficient evidence to keep him in detention. If convicted, he could face up to 12 to 20 years in prison. Follow me for the latest updates.
Without hesitation, a man jumped into the 25-foot-high water from the bridge and rescued an 18-month-old baby girl in the icy seawater. On February 25th, a serious accident involving multiple vehicles collided on a bridge in Ocean City, Maryland. One of the pickup trucks was dangerously suspended outside a concrete guardrail. Due to the impact force generated by the collision, an 18-month-old baby girl inside the truck was instantly thrown out and fell into the seawater at the bottom of the bridge. When tragedy was about to happen, a driver got out of the car and quickly rushed towards the guardrail, jumping off without hesitation.
When I looked over, the little girl, she was on her back, head completely out of the water, arms moving, legs kicking.
He swam towards the girl and rescued her before the emergency personnel arrived.
And then I put her against my shoulder, and within seconds, she spit up a bunch of water.
The people on board witnessed the thrilling rescue process. Subsequently, the hero climbed up the ladder and handed over the child to the baby's family. Firefighter and paramedic Ryan Wilmer was one of the first people to arrive at the scene. He said,
I had to go over and shake his hand. I had to see who took the jump and made the plunge, for lack of a better term, to save this child. Without his heroism, she wouldn't be here.
This brave hero originally hoped to remain anonymous until it was confirmed that the baby was safe and sound before willing to reveal his identity. At the time of the incident, Bauer's daughter Ava was on the bridge, watching her father jump into the water with both feet on the ground. Ava choked up and said,
Probably the scariest part of my life, seeing my dad jump off the bridge.
A woman shot and killed 3 masked teenagers who tried to break into her home early in the morning. She says it was self-defense, but the teens' families are now demanding that she face criminal charges. The 3 teenagers approached the home wearing masks, allegedly attempting an armed robbery. Moments later, gunshots rang out from inside the house, striking all 3 suspects. 1 teen died at the scene. The other 2 were rushed to the hospital, where they were later pronounced dead. Family members later confirmed the victims were only 15 and 16 years old. The female homeowner told authorities that at least one of the teens was armed and fired a shot at her first. Fearing for her life, she opened fire in response. Despite this, the families insist her actions were excessive, claiming she had no right to take their sons' lives and demanding she be held accountable. However, investigators later recovered 2 guns in the front yard and found ballistic evidence.
Get out! I'm not accepting anything. Call your sergeant. You don't have to arrest me, ma'am. I didn't do anything. Get out! Let go! Let go!
They thought she was just being difficult, another driver refusing to comply. What they didn't know was who she really was. Officers in Edison responded to a call about a distressed woman. But when they approached Sarah, she remained calm, composed. "I don't have to step out," she said. "Call your sergeant." But instead of following protocol, they chose force. A window was shattered. She was dragged onto the asphalt, ignoring her cries that she couldn't breathe. Then came the charges for felonies. As they towed her car away, the officers laughed, thinking they had won. But 1 hour later, everything changed. The station was flooded with federal agents. Because Sarah wasn't just a driver. She was the daughter of the FBI director, and she had recorded everything. This wasn't just an arrest. It was evidence. Every officer involved was immediately fired and later indicted. Now the department is facing a $5 million lawsuit and a scandal that won't fade anytime soon. So the question is, did they cross the line? Should they go to prison? Yes or no?
Put your hand on your back!
Imagine this. Marcus is just picking up his 9-year-old daughter from school. Within minutes, he's in handcuffs. Why? The officers assumed he was an illegal immigrant based solely on his skin color. In the middle of a busy street, they force him to strip for a humiliating search. It wasn't about safety, it was an act meant to break him. Marcus stays silent, his eyes holding a secret the officers aren't ready for. Hours later, the truth comes out. The officers' faces go pale. Marcus isn't an illegal immigrant. He's not even an ordinary citizen. He holds a position that makes every officer in that room tremble with fear. What Marcus decides to do next in the name of justice will shake careers and change the law forever. The hunters have just become the prey. Should these officers face prison for what they did?
Sir, put your hand behind your back. Don't lock your fingers. You should not do this, right? Put your hands upside down. Spread your feet.
They thought they were arresting a fake cop, but instead, they handcuffed their worst nightmare. During a routine traffic stop, a man identified himself as a U.S. Marshal. Rather than verifying his credentials, the local officers mocked him. "Yeah, and I'm the president," one sneered. Even after showing his federal ID, the officers grew aggressive. They slammed him against the car, twisted his arms, and threw him into the squad car, ignoring every protocol in their own arrogance. The laughter stopped abruptly when they finally checked his ID. The man in handcuffs was a high-ranking U.S. Marshal on an official mission. Shock and terror replaced the officers' confidence in an instant. The fallout was swift. The officers faced civil rights lawsuits, claims of excessive force, and by the end of the week, all were fired. The city now faces a massive payout, costing taxpayers millions. When ego replaces the law, everyone loses. Should these officers face prison for abusing their power?
Martha was only 13 years old. In her neighborhood, people didn't see a child who needed understanding. They saw a problem. Because of her mental health struggles and occasional emotional outbursts, the neighbors had already given her a label, a crazy girl. Whispers followed her everywhere she went. To them, Martha was just a burden, someone no one really cared about. One afternoon, while walking home, Martha suddenly had an emotional breakdown. Overwhelmed and unable to control her feelings, she collapsed onto the grass beside the road, rolling in the dirt and mud. Instead of helping her, neighbors stood there watching. Some laughed, others shook their heads in disgust. Not a single person stepped forward to help the frightened 13-year-old girl. But what they didn't realize was that they had just made a serious mistake, because they had no idea who Martha's father really was. When he found out what had happened to his daughter, he was furious. And what he did next would make every single one of those neighbors regret the way they treated her. Sometimes, the people others look down on are connected to far more power than anyone could imagine. Comment neighbor for part 2.
Supporting the woman's statement. Authorities confirmed that at least one of the teens did fire a weapon. Based on the evidence, police concluded this was not a misunderstanding, but a planned attempted armed robbery. Officials also stated that the homeowner acted within the state's stand your ground and self-defense laws, meaning her actions were legally justified. What's your take on this?
A passenger at a NYC subway station used a skateboard to knock down a homeless man who was attempting to attack him with a knife, which resulted in the homeless man being killed by an oncoming train and now faces murder charges. On the afternoon of the incident, 53-year-old homeless man Edmund Clark and 28-year-old citizen Jeffrey Robinson got into a verbal altercation on the platform. At the time, Jeffrey was holding a skateboard while Edmund concealed a knife behind his back and slowly approached Jeffrey. After Jeffrey sensed the danger, he directly struck Edmund in the face with the skateboard in his hand, causing him to lose balance, fall down, and tumble onto the tracks. At that moment, A train was entering the station and Edmund's life was instantly ended. Jeffrey was subsequently charged with intentional murder. The prosecution argued that Jeffrey's actions constituted active homicide, reasoning that although Edmund was holding a blade at the time, he had not yet launched a direct attack on Jeffrey. However, Jeffrey maintained that his actions were self-defense that resulted in an accidental outcome. He argued in his defense, "I saw the knife in Edmund's hand. If I hadn't acted, he very likely would have stabbed me to death." But the court repeatedly reviewed the footage and ultimately determined that Jeffrey was guilty of second-degree manslaughter, sentencing him to 6 years in prison. So do you think Jeffrey's actions constituted self-defense or intentional murder? Leave your thoughts in the comments.
A young woman was fired from her job for telling a fellow passenger to stop wiping her child's bottom in public. The woman was sitting by the window when a middle-aged woman with a small child sat next to her. The child kept crying. Soon, the young woman smelled something bad. Before she could say anything, the older woman opened the child's diaper and started wiping the child right there on the bus. She took her time cleaning the child and even placed the dirty diaper on the seat. Some of the mess touched the young woman's pants. Angry and shocked, the young woman told her she should not change a diaper on a public bus because it affects everyone. The older woman argued back and said the young woman did not understand how to take care of kids. Someone recorded the moment, and the video went viral online. Instead of getting support, the young woman faced heavy criticism. Her company said the attention was bad for their image and fired her. Now, the young woman says she plans to sue both the middle-aged woman and the bus system. Some people say she did the right thing. Others say she should have stayed quiet and just washed her pants. If it were you, would you speak up or stay silent and deal with it later?
The person who stole this copper wire, he was dressed up like he worked for a power company and he knew exactly what he was doing. He had the tools, in and out in less than 15 minutes. Just outside Juanita's Mexican kitchen.
These are all the wires that we put back in there.
Co-owner Miguel Nunez showed us the small pieces of plastic left behind from where those copper-filled cables were ripped out of the ground.
He had all the tools that he needed. He knew what he was doing.
In security camera video from a neighboring business, you can see the alleged thief appears to be dressed as a legitimate utility worker. At first, he uses that long pole to work on the transformer.
And from there, he went to his truck and turned off the power, started beating the PVC pipe casing with a hammer.
Then he uses a saw to get to the cables and the copper inside.
You can see the guy, he just grabs his truck, pulls the wires from the ground, and just goes with them.
The incident shutting off the power here for days, delaying the restaurant's long-planned move from their old location to this new one. Nunez says it's not the first time either.
I was like, really? Again? Because it's been the second time it's happened.
Okay, we got it. I think we're good.
Breaking news in a shocking and highly controversial statement. President Donald Trump has proposed a dramatic cut to the length of the U.S. academic year, allowing children to attend school for only 6 months annually starting in August. Citing the post-COVID reality of disrupted education, Trump stated, "Kids don't need to be locked up in classrooms all year. A few months of good education is enough. Let them be kids, enjoy life, and learn from the real world." The announcement drew immediate and fierce criticism from educators, parents, and child development experts across the country. Many warned that such a drastic reduction in classroom time could severely damage academic performance, worsen educational inequality, and weaken the long-term strength of the nation's workforce. Critics argue the plan is not backed by any credible research and would reverse decades of progress in public education. Still, some of Trump's supporters applauded the move, describing it as a return to common sense and a way to shield children from overeducation and government overreach. Although no formal policy has been introduced yet, the statement has already sparked a firestorm of debate on cable news and across social media platforms, with trending hashtags like Save Our Schools and Let Kids Learn reflecting the deep divide. Whether this is a serious legislative proposal or simply another campaign season headline remains uncertain. But one thing is clear, America's education system is now in the political crosshairs. Drop you comments.
That's when Richard Gilson started hitting glass outside his Jersey Shore home.
That was actually in the ground, this jar.
Near the glass was what he thought were root balls. He tossed them to the side, but days later discovered something strange about the object.
One of those root balls popped up. Lo and behold, it wasn't a root ball. It was actually $1,000 wrapped in burlap. These are $100 rolls of 10s and 20s. And, you know, he had them all wrapped up in a $1,000 bundle.
There were 2 wads of cash dating back to 1934.
When we looked it up, the value of $2,000 back in 1934
was $40,000.
Initially, Gilson thought the money must have been tied to a bank robbery some 9 decades earlier, but learned the property was owned by a James Dempsey during the Great Depression, and that the owner had asked his daughter to bury the money somewhere in the front yard.
It's a lot of money, but it's not life-changing, obviously. I think the story's more interesting, the history of the fact that this fella did this 90-some years ago, and people had asked me, what are you going to do with it?
Horrifying moments captured on home security video showing Benjamin Nevers in an early morning shootout with a man.
2 intruders case a house in the dead of night. They break in the kitchen window and begin ransacking the house. Then they come upon a tenant. He's asleep.
His friend was held down at gunpoint in the living room.
Down. And I woke up and I was just quick enough to react and grab my gun and cock it. And I just sat there and kind of waited. I knew they were going to come to my room.
As soon as that gunman came in, mayhem ensued.
The suspect was also hit in the wild exchange, stumbling out of the house as he crawls to make his getaway in Dearborn Heights, Michigan.
It was really terrifying.
We spoke to the brave homeowner, Benjamin Nevers, today. This guy who shot at you, what was he after?
The bag that they tried to get was right there, and there was a bottle of Don Julio in it and a chocolate bar.
Police have 1 man in custody. They're looking for the second suspect.
Un hombre de 53 años fue golpeado hasta la muerte en una acalorada discusión en una carretera pública. El 21 de octubre a las 22:18 horas, Cari Aliaga, de 53 años, bajó del taxi con el atacante. El video de vigilancia muestra a los tres conversando brevemente hasta que la situación se volvió tensa y comenzaron a discutir. Durante el empujón, el atacante derribó a Cari y le dio al menos 18 puñetazos, pero su ira aún no se ha calmado. Continuó golpeando a Cari, pisándole la cara y la cabeza. Aunque los transeúntes intentaron detener el ataque, el atacante no se detuvo. Tras llevar a cabo el ataque, huyó rápidamente del lugar. El transeúnte llamó a la policía. Una vez en el lugar, la policía trasladó rápidamente a Cari al hospital y horas después fue declarada muerta. 5 horas después del crimen, Marco Sáenz, de 39 años, fue capturado por la policía con la ayuda de cámaras de seguridad en el lugar. La familia de la víctima pidió a la fiscalía que castigara severamente y esperaba que recibiera el castigo que merecía. Por su parte, el abogado defensor del detenido alegó que el comportamiento de su cliente era legítima defensa. ¿Qué opina de esto?
A boy returned a wallet, only to be sued for $3,000 by its owner. 17-year-old Adrian found a handbag in a supermarket parking lot containing $10,000 in cash. He drove more than 10 kilometers to personally hand the wallet back to its owner. He thought he would be praised for his honesty, but instead, the owner called the police. She claimed that $3,000 was missing from the bag and demanded that Adrian repay the lost money. Adrian felt deeply wronged. He hadn't taken anything, but now he had no way to prove it. The police, too, couldn't determine who was lying. The case has since entered civil litigation. Once the story went public, it ignited fierce debate online. Some said this is what happens when kindness gets punished. Others argued he shouldn't have returned it without evidence. A judge later commented that no matter how good your intentions are, you should always keep a record of your actions. Adrian said quietly, "I just wanted to do the right thing. I never thought I'd end up being treated like a thief."
Shots fired! Suspect hit! I got shots fired!
In 2023, the Houston Police Department launched a citywide search for 2 suspects involved in a series of residential burglaries. One of the suspects was a 23-year-old man named Edwin Joy Villegas. Relying on his 17 years of law enforcement experience, Officer Mauricio Val went to check the rear entrance of a nearby business, where he discovered clear signs that a suspect had recently been in the area. Now let's take a look at the surveillance footage from the scene. At the time, the officer was driving an unmarked police vehicle as he approached the location where the suspect was believed to be hiding. Meanwhile, the suspect walked up to the window of a parked truck, looking around cautiously. After noticing someone approaching, he retreated back into the shadows. Moments later, the officer slowly pulled his vehicle closer to the truck. That's when it happened. The suspect suddenly charged out from the darkness and opened fire without warning.
Shots fired! Suspect hit! I got shots fired!
He fired 9 shots at the vehicle. The officer was struck by gunfire and immediately overwhelmed by intense pain. He didn't even have time to unbuckle his seatbelt, leaving him briefly trapped inside the car. In the moments that followed, the suspect scanned the area for backup units. Believing the officer had been fatally wounded, he attempted to seize the vehicle and escape the scene. But what the suspect didn't expect was that the officer would still manage to get out of the car and return fire.
We followed a couple panhandlers to find out.
Sometimes you may not even notice they're there. Other times you may feel like helping someone out. We hit the streets to find out who they are and what they do with your dollar once they get it. The first person we met was 40-year-old Shane Wright. Right off the bat, we learned a lot from his cardboard sign.
You're a veteran?
Yes, I am. Marine Corps.
When did you serve?
93, 94, 95, 96. The desert storm.
On a good day, Shane says he'll be handed $30 or $40 in Springfield Township. There's not much mystery here. He makes it pretty clear where your dollar is going. He didn't hesitate when we asked him where he sleeps at night.
On the street, on cardboard, and I got a sleeping bag stashed. When it rains, I try to find a porch.
Every day. Seconds later, a truck driver flagged us down.
He's there from sun up to sundown every day. He lives right there.
Floyd Hardy told us Worthington lives in a house right around the corner.
They thought he was a nosy civilian recording their bribes. They didn't know he was the director of the FBI.
Get out of the car!
What?
Get out of the car right now!
I haven't done anything!
She was mistaken for a so-called sovereign citizen, thought to be making up her own laws, but she was the governor's wife. An officer ignored her ID, lost control, smashed the car window, and dragged her out, acting as if his authority outweighed everything. At the station, black SUVs swarmed the scene, and her calm presence revealed the truth instantly. The officer was immediately stripped of his badge, faced a $5 million lawsuit, and the entire precinct was shut down by the governor. He broke her window, but in the end, he destroyed his own career.
Sir, I can't find your back. Don't lock your fingers. You should not do this, right? Put your hands upside down. Spread your feet.
They thought they were arresting a fake cop, but instead, they handcuffed their worst nightmare. During a routine traffic stop, a man identified himself as a U.S. Marshal. Rather than verifying his credentials, the local officers mocked him. "Yeah, and I'm the president," one sneered. Even after showing his federal ID, the officers grew aggressive. They slammed him against the car, twisted his arms, and threw him into the squad car, ignoring every protocol in their own arrogance. The laughter stopped abruptly when they finally checked his ID. The man in handcuffs was a high-ranking U.S. Marshal on an official mission. Shock and terror replaced the officers' confidence in an instant. The fallout was swift. The officers faced civil rights lawsuits, claims of excessive force, and by the end of the week, all were fired. The city now faces a massive payout, costing taxpayers millions. When ego replaces the law, everyone loses. Should these officers face prison for abusing their power?
Oh, Jamie! Jamie, no! Oh my, no! Oh my God!
Local news reports confirmed that missing Jimmy Gracie has been found deceased. Authorities located his body this Thursday afternoon, March 19th, in the waters of Barcelona's Olympic port. Officials focused their search on this area after Jimmy's wallet was discovered in the water nearby. This time, they still need to officially confirm the identity of the body and determine the exact cause of death. However, according to current lines of investigation, there is no indication of foul play. Forensic analysis will be key to understanding how Jimmy ended up in the water, whether he drowned or had passed away before entering the water. He was last seen around 3 a.m. by friends at a nightclub in Barcelona, and the discovery of his wallet in the water near the location he went missing ultimately led authorities to his remains today.
Stop! Don't touch me! I can search you, and that's what I'm doing.
Shocking allegations of police misconduct are rocking a community. A young woman was pulled over for speeding. She stayed calm as the officer ordered her to step out of her car and stand in front of his patrol vehicle. During a routine pat-down, the officer crossed the line, touching her in ways he never should. When she stepped back to protect herself, he yelled, insulted, and threatened her. Moments later, backup arrived, but everything froze when they realized the woman he had just violated was the wife of a police chief from another state. Shock and panic spread among among the officers. Internal Affairs immediately launched an investigation. The offending officer was fired within 24 hours and faced a civil lawsuit. The city was ordered to pay $5 million in taxpayer money, igniting public outrage over a completely preventable abuse of power. This incident has left the community demanding accountability, justice, and systemic change.
Let's try this again.
Let's not. Let's fill out the form and you answer my questions.
This morning, a startling incident unfolded when a police officer was terminated following inappropriate conduct involving a high-ranking federal official. According to witnesses, the situation began as a routine parking violation stop. However, the interaction quickly escalated into a heated confrontation. During the exchange, the officer reportedly lost his composure and threw a parking ticket directly at the man's face, drawing attention from nearby onlookers. Moments later, the situation took a dramatic turn. The individual was identified as the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who was in the area on official duty. Once his identity was confirmed, senior officials were immediately alerted, prompting a swift internal review. Within hours, a spokesperson for the local police department announced that the officer's actions represented a serious breach of professional standards and departmental conduct. The officer was dismissed the same day, and a formal apology was issued to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. An investigation remains ongoing to fully understand the sequence of events. Meanwhile, the incident has reignited public discussion surrounding law enforcement behavior, authority, and accountability in high-pressure situations.
In that situation, we cannot expect a mother with a sick child to remain calm. The judge found Catherine not guilty. Do you think this verdict is fair?
An 8th grade boy stabbed his classmate with a sharp weapon and pushed him into the lake. On the afternoon of November 5th, TH and the boy came to the lake together, and then they had a dispute. The surveillance video shows that the boy grabbed TH's neck, slammed him into the guardrail, and then took out the knife he carried with him to stab TH. After stabbing TH, the boy did not stop, but directly picked him up and pushed him into the lake. After TH fell into the water, the boy saw him struggling in the water by the lake and immediately turned around to leave. A few minutes later, passers-by discovered TH, who had fallen into the water, and immediately called the police, taking him to the hospital. Unfortunately, TH passed away due to prolonged suffocation and excessive blood loss caused by drowning. After investigation, the police found that the boy was classmates with TH. Investigators said that the two were originally good friends, but recently they have had conflicts. The police immediately arrested the boy. Subsequently, TH's parents filed a lawsuit against the boy and claimed $2 million in damages.
Buenas noches.
A 67-year-old woman unfortunately deceased in front of her neighbor's house, and her children are demanding $2 million in compensation. 67-year-old Martha Wilson baked pumpkin pie on Halloween to give to her neighbors. As she walked up to her neighbor's doorstep, a sensory skull decoration suddenly lit up and let out a scream. Martha slipped in shock and hit the back of her head on the ground, losing consciousness on the spot. The neighbor opened the door and found her, immediately calling 911. Unfortunately, when the medical staff arrived, they confirmed that Martha had no vital signs. Martha's cause of death was determined to be cerebral hemorrhage caused by a head impact. Martha's family sued their neighbor for $2 million in compensation. They believe that this skull prop is both dangerous and malicious, with no warning signs or adjustable volume, and is unsafe for both children and the elderly. However, the neighbor insisted that this was just a Halloween decoration and had no malicious intent, and he could not have predicted that it would trigger such a tragedy. He also pointed out that every household in the community would display similar decorations, and Martha's passing deeply saddened him, but he never expected such a thing to happen. But the judge believes that placing shock devices that can suddenly make loud noises in dimly lit areas inherently poses a danger. In the end, the court ruled that the neighbor was responsible for 30% of the negligence and ordered them to pay $45,000 in compensation to Martha's family. Do you think the judge's verdict is fair?
A 16-year-old boy shot and killed an intruder while protecting his 8-year-old sister, and the whole community is calling him a hero. On October 28th, the 8-year-old girl was waiting for her school bus as usual when a white car suddenly stopped across the street. 4 to 5 men got out and started walking toward her with bad intentions. Sensing danger, the girl immediately ran back home, with the men chasing close behind. They began kicking the front door violently. Inside the house were only the 8-year-old girl and her 16-year-old brother, Keller Edelman, as their parents were out of town. Hearing the noise, Keller told his sister to hide upstairs and not come out. He then went to his father's room, grabbed a handgun, and shouted through the door, warning the intruders not to come in, that he was armed. But the intruders didn't take him seriously. They thought he was bluffing with a fake gun. Moments later, the door was kicked open and a shot rang out. One intruder collapsed instantly, while the others fled in panic. Keller immediately called 911. When police arrived and reviewed the security footage, they determined that Keller acted in self-defense and had protected his sister's life. The local community praised him as a teenage hero. However, the family of the dead intruder argued that he didn't deserve to be killed and threatened to sue Keller, demanding $2 million in compensation. What do you think? If you were Keller, would you have pulled the trigger to protect your sister? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Un niño de octavo grado lo empujó al lago después de apuñalar a su compañero de clase con un arma afilada. En la tarde del 5 de noviembre, TH llegó al lago con el sospechoso y luego tuvo una discusión. Según el video de vigilancia, el sospechoso agarró el cuello de TH y golpeó la barandilla y luego sacó el cuchillo que llevaba consigo y lo apuñaló hacia TH. Después de apuñalar a TH, el sospechoso no se detuvo y lo levantó directamente para empujarlo al lago. Después de que cayó al lago, el sospechoso vio a TH luchando en el agua junto al lago y luego se dio la vuelta y se fue. Minutos más tarde, a TH, que cayó al agua, fue encontrado por los peatones que pasaban e inmediatamente llamaron a la policía.